an interesting YouTube channel yesterday, which I watch all the time. Whenever they post a new video, I watch it because they're a wonderful couple and they're on the same journey that I'm on, really. And the YouTube channel is called Wildlings Sailing. And it reminded me a little bit of Waterworld with the spear gun. The recent video, there was a spear gun incident. And the young man who is building and looking after the sailing boat that they have is, he wants to spear a fish. He's got the idea that he has to learn how to spear fish. This is what he wants to do. It's inherent in his nature. First of all, he made a spearfish, a spear device as best he could, and then found that he couldn't spear any fish. Well, there weren't actually any fish to spear anyway, but he's practicing because he's obviously going to go somewhere where there are fish to spear, and he's going to spear fish and eat these fish and live off these fish. Because what's happened is we're going back to the water. And this is what this movie is about. If you haven't seen this movie, you need to watch this movie. It's really, really important movie, this great movie. And so, in this movie there are only two kinds of people in the world. There's the people who live on sailing boats, and the people that, I'm not sure what they're called, but the people who are their enemies, if you like. They're not their enemies, but they have made the yachts their enemy, are called the smokers, and they live on the old wreck of the Exxon Valdez and row this thing around like Roman galleys. But it's a great movie, and it's panned by the media because, again, it's a movie which is anti the globalists, really. And so whenever anything is anti the globalists, the media just pans it. They're told to. And Kevin Costner has a history of making interesting movies. So anyway, in this movie there's no land, there's no dry land, it's all water, and everybody's forced to go back to the water. And it's interesting because it leads to the idea, this has happened in the past. The whales and the dolphins used to live on the land. And at some point in their career, they decided that it was safer in the water than it was on the land. They think that the origin of these animals were creatures that lived on land and water and hunted for food in lagoons and places like that, and they were slow moving and easily preyed upon by other more aggressive species, and so they were more gentle and pacific in their nature. Instead of developing fight back and big teeth and all that kind of thing, what they did was they developed a peaceful response, which was to acquiesce and go back to the water. And so this is why the dolphins and the whales are such wonderful creatures, because they're the evolution of peace, if you like, in the world. And so the peaceful people of the world, it's so difficult to live on land now that many people are moving back to the water. Peaceful people are moving back to the water. And it's interesting, the parallels to this of the hippie movement of the 1950s and 1960s started off as a nature movement. Actually, the Germans were the origin of this. And in Southern California, there was a nature movie. If you ever heard the song Nature Boy, this was written by one of these original nature people. And he used to live under the Hollywood sign, under the L of Hollywood. He used to have his home under that sign there. And when he came to retirement age, it's interesting, because he served nature, he was imbued with good fortune. And obviously as you get older, like I am, I'm older now, I can't just live freely. I have to be supported. And so I have a pension. And in Hollywood, the only way of getting a pension seems to be to write a hit song. And what he did was he wrote this song Nature Boy, and he gave it to Nat King Cole, and Nat King Cole made a hit out of it. And so this was his retirement fund, really. So he lived a good life in the end. I think he might even be still alive today, I'm not sure. Could check it out on Wikipedia. So, that's enough for this take.
Whoa, first time. So we have very, very strong winds for the next few days, so we're just camping out here. There's literally no facilities, there's no shop. We might hike like 2 hours tomorrow to the closest supermarket. But in the meantime, check this out. I got this spear off my mum for Christmas, but I managed to lose the end. So I've fashioned by sharpening some hardwood sticks into points. And it's a pole spear, so you shoot it with this elastic. So I'm going to try over by the rocks to see if there's anything there. It's difficult to get close to them, and it gets really cold really quickly, so you only have 5 minutes before your body temperature gets really cool. So I'm going to just go on out on these rocks for a little bit and give it another try.
So, whilst I was doing that, I was cooking some eggs and I'd forgotten about them. When you remember the eggs is the right time to, it means they're done. So let's check this out, because they may be wrong, they may be underdone or overdone. Let's have a look and see, because I forgot about the eggs. They've been cooking for about 15 minutes. And we'll see how they are. Without timing. Let's see. That's good. Oh well. Tinkerbelle calling. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good. Pretty good egg. Nothing wrong with that one. Hard-boiled egg. And there's 3 eggs in there. So we'll see what that's all about. I'm going to eat now, and then I'll carry on in a minute. So you can see this young man with his spear is not a lot different than Kevin Costner in Waterworld. And it must have been what the dolphins were like when they went back to the water. You know, they had to learn how to catch their food again and everything. And anyway, in the latest, we come back to the latest video that they posted just, I think yesterday, where he has a new spear gun and a proper bought spear gun, and similar to this one. You know, you load it, you press the trigger kind of thing. And one thing he hasn't maybe realised is just how lethal a weapon a spear gun is. And there was an incident where he, on the video, the spear gun was pointing at his father in the water, and a number of people commented, and I also thought, whoa, we should be doing that. Everybody thought the same thing, and so he got quite a few comments about this not pointing the spear gun at anybody, because they are completely, totally lethal weapons. You kill somebody with it. People have been murdered with spear guns, yeah. And so just to show it's a very, very powerful and dangerous thing. And in the process of the messing with the spear gun, he broke his finger. He hurt his finger. This is the trigger finger, you know. Maybe the trigger finger, might do. He would have to. He didn't say which finger it was, but it might well be the trigger finger. And so, whenever you make a mistake in nature, you have an accident. And if you don't learn from wisdom, what you do is you have to learn from woe. And wisdom is coming from other people normally. You read books or you talk to masters. You have a master. Unfortunately, these days we don't actually have masters. We have to learn things ourselves. And so this young man is having to teach himself how to spearfish. But no doubt in the course of his journey he will meet spearfishing masters and be able to learn from them. And so he had the accident with the finger, and then the wisdom came at the same time about pointing the spear gun and the danger of it. So he's learning this lesson very strongly before anybody gets injured. And the first person to get injured will be him, actually. So to be careful with the spear gun, yeah. And the way to be careful with the spear gun is to keep your awareness, not to actually use the spear gun. If you're lost in your mind, you need to be in full awareness, as this young man is most of the time. And this will keep you concentrated, focused on what you're doing, and not to lose your focus and be completely focused upon the task of looking after, handling the spear gun and dealing with whatever needs to happen between loading it and unloading it, because the whole time that the spear gun is loaded up, the more dangerous it is. And it shouldn't be loaded out of the water. It shouldn't really be loaded. It should be loaded only in the water when you're in a position to, you know, pointing it downwards into the sea, away from you, and so on. And so just to show, if there are any mistakes, that nature gives people accidents, and if you don't learn from the first accident, then you have to get an even worse accident. And 3 strikes and you're out, you know, 3 progressively worse accidents, and then something even worse will happen to you. So, 1 egg, finished. 2 eggs, just eaten. And the 3rd egg is not yet eaten. And we have to, are we going to eat the 3rd egg, or are we going to learn? Well, even if we learn our lesson, this is important, even if we learn our lesson now from wisdom, and we learn and listen to everybody, we're still going to have to make the mistake again. We're going to have to point this gun in the wrong direction and go through the process knowing that we make a mistake, because this is what puts that wisdom, if you like, permanently into the brain, by going through the 3rd egg, if you like, the 3rd experience of making the mistake, which is the one where we make the mistake and know that we're doing it whilst we're doing it. That's reprogramming our brain never to do it again. I hope this helps, and yeah, watch this channel, Wildlings Sailing. It's really great. These people in the same situation as I am, where they need to get onto the ocean, they can't really afford to do it properly, and they have to rely on their good fortune for nature to bring to them what they need. And it brought to them a very, very nice sailing boat, which they sailed from England to France. And when they're in France, they decided to sell their sailing boat, and they got a good price for a sailing boat, which they worked on and made in good condition. And they got a wonderful catamaran, absolutely beautiful design catamaran. I haven't seen a more elegant, nicer looking catamaran ever, really. It's just so beautiful. And it was owned by someone, I think they died. You could watch the channel and find out the exact story on it. But these people picked up this catamaran, and it was starting to go off, and they caught it just in time and fixed many of its problems, and are still working on fixing its problems. and like me, the engine is hard to start. That's my engine is hard to start, and this is a terrible thing. But you know, it's all the time. It's leading you to look at all the systems, make sure everything's, because you know, if your engine fails start, then you start thinking, oh my God, I've got to be able to sail this thing properly, and how reliant am I upon the sails and everything. There's a reason for things being the way they are, and so in the end, as long as they follow their inclinations as they come to them one at a time, this boat will look after them, be their home on the ocean, and take them to wonderful places, and become the new inhabitants of Waterworld with the spear gun. And they are a great example to other young couples who can make the same journey back to nature. So it's a journey back to nature, because all of these people who are doing it are peaceful people. They don't want to fight and argue with the authorities. And you'll see there's a video, just a few videos back, of the police come and hassle them. You know, they don't need to be hassled. They've got enough problems of their own. They're only there because they need to be there to sort their boat out. They need to practice a sail. And the police are forcing them, if you like, to, instead of doing it later when they're probably more ready, they have to do it now and get their boat going now, and change countries and go to Spain. So they're on their way to Spain now, because they're not going to do what the police say. They're not going to like register their boat in France and all that nonsense. And the police say you are now French citizens because you've been there for a certain time. It's nonsense, you know. It's absolute nonsense. They're international travellers of the world. They're allowed to go anywhere. They don't need passports for their boat. They don't even need passports for themselves, really. Wherever they go, they should be welcomed with open arms by the native inhabitants of whatever wonderful countries and islands that they choose to visit. And so, you know, what can they do? The worst thing they can do to you is say, you have to go. And you say, thank God for that, let's get out of here. And you get on your boat and you sail away. And so that's why it's so important that your boat is able to sail. The motor is not as important as the sails. The sails are the most important factor. In Kevin Costner's Waterworld, there's no motors. The water people have no motors. It's only the smokers who have motors. And I'd like you to show you, I'm going to feature on my channel another gentleman who, at 82 years old, sailing the oceans, who has no motor. He uses a sculling oar if he needs one. And that's for a future video. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you check out Wildlings Sailing, because they're a lovely bunch, and they are at the forefront of the evolution of humanity back to the water, like the dolphins and the whales did, the peaceful people of the water. Please help them wherever they sail. Thank you.